Okay, so what we were discussing about is that how we take care of various kinds of a broadcast event. So we have seen that the broadcast event, or when we say somebody is broadcasting, it means somebody is sending a intent with an action. So it can be that intent with an action can be sent by a user application. So either this can send broadcast a intent with action, and this can also do the same thing. This can also pass broadcast a intent with some action. Okay. Now, depending on broadcast receiver is listening for that action or not, this will get triggered. It is quite possible that you can have a broadcast receiver and they can listen for multiple actions. They can uh, register, let us put it, register is the better word, register for multiple actions. Okay, so this is the basic concept of broadcasting an intent with an action and the broadcast receiver. Now, couple of things, basic things about broadcast receiver which you should know. That broadcast receiver is a special class and they don't display a user interface. It is like a small batch class file, a simple Java class file which is running in the background. They don't have a user interface. So that's it. It is a very simple, a small class. When I will start developing the code, that time you'll get the feel of this. So don't worry about that. Broadcast receiver can create a status bar notification to alert the user when a broadcast event occurs. So there is a notification mechanism which we are going to cover as well when we come to concept of understanding services. But right now I just want to explain you that broadcast receiver can create a status bar notification. So what it means is that if the time zone has been changed or some battery has been low, then you can display a status bar that, hey, battery has been low, do something. Broadcast receiver can also initiate a service to perform some work based on the event, and broadcast receiver must be registered either in code or within the app manifest. Now, how does this broadcast receiver actually looks like? So let me just go forward and I will come back. So when you develop a broadcast receiver, basically if you see here, this is the broadcast receiver. This is your broadcast receiver class. This is public class expense BR. And the way when we develop activity, we extend from activity. When we develop broadcast receiver, we extend from broadcast receiver class. So very simple. In fact, broadcast receiver code is one of the simplest one. So in broadcast receiver, there is not much. We have to just say public class expense BR, whatever name you want to give, you can give and say extends broadcast receiver. And there is one method called on receive. Okay, this method get triggered, and this method is who triggers that the system will trigger that, and it will get triggered depending on if this broadcast receiver has been registered for this action. So let us assume that this broadcast receiver is registered for this action com Isaac at action expense. Now I am saying create an intent filter, expense BR receiver, new expense BR, and inside this expense BR, I am registering the receiver for this filter. Okay, so what I am saying basically is that expense BR broadcast receiver will be listening for an action or an intent whose action is com Isaac 80 action expense. This string could be anything. So this is what is broadcast receiver will look like. Now once it get triggered, you can put anything you want to do here. You put here whatever you want to do. You want to do here. Once this broadcast receiver is triggered. So that is pretty much what is the broadcast receiver it means. Now coming back to this, few things we should understand. First is that broadcast receiver don't display user interface. So if you want to try the toast or anything like that, it will not work. But if you want to display some kind of a message and all, you should use the notification mechanism. If you want to start a service from inside broadcast receiver, you should be able to do that. If you want to start an activity, by default, it will not start an activity. You have to put a flag called new task, new task. So if you want to start an activity, you have to use something called start activity with new flag. Okay? Something like this. Start activity and this intent object, and then you pass here new task. This is a flag you have to pass. In most of the time we don't pass that flag because it uses the parent context, but when you are doing from broadcast receiver and you want to launch a new screen, it is possible, but remember to pass that task flag. It must be registered like a activity or service within the code or within the app manifest, and it uses intent filter to specify which intent it is listening for. It is same like somebody is starting an activity using implicit intent, or somebody is starting a service using implicit intent. So the same, but in the case of broadcast, it is always implicit. Now there is one more concept in the world of broadcast. And before that, just a small concept. What happened if there is a implicit intent you are using for starting an activity? Okay, there is a very fundamental difference between both of them, and you are going to start a implicit intent, which is always there. There is no explicit intent for broadcast. So broadcast. Okay, there is a difference between both. In the case of implicit intent, you are trying to start an activity, or you are doing an implicit intent for sending a broadcast to a broadcast receiver, right? To start a broadcast receiver. So it will start activity, it will start broadcast receiver. Now here, if there are multiple activities like this, and each is listening for the same action A, action A, action A, action A. It will still start only one activity. Even if there are three activity matching the same action which is there in the start activity intent object through a implicit intent. But in case of this, what happens is, if there is a broadcast receiver A listening for action A, action X, this is a broadcast receiver B listening for action X, broadcast receiver C listening for action X. Okay, and this was your activity A, activity B, activity C. Now, if in this case what happened, if you broadcast a intent with an action called action X, and there are 3 broadcast receiver, then what happens? In this case, all broadcast receiver will start. So that is the difference between broadcasting a implicit intent in the world of activity and in the world of broadcast. In the world of activity, it will start only one, but how it will decide, it will give you a pop-up to select which activity you want to start. So that is the difference between both of them. Okay. Now, once you understand this basic concept, now we can talk about this one. What it says that there are 2 major classes of broadcast that can be received. One is called normal broadcast, sent with simple thing context.send broadcast, and are completely asynchronous. What it means is that all receivers of the broadcast are run in an undefined order, often at the same time. So these are asynchronous. All receivers of the broadcast run in an undefined order, often at the same time. So let us assume that there are 10 broadcast receivers listening for an action, and somebody broadcasted that action. Then all of them will start running. Now, there is other thing called ordered broadcast. The concept of ordered broadcast is that these are delivered to, very important, one receiver at a time. As each receiver executes in turn, it can propagate a result to the next receiver. That is very important. So if you want to build a logic that something happens, then my broadcast receiver should take care of first, or you want that any further broadcast receiver, if there is in the chain, it should be not receiving it, then you can abort as well. Or it can completely abort the broadcast so that it won't be passed to other receivers. Okay, so that is what is the meaning of ordered broadcast. Ordered broadcast means if there are 10 broadcast receivers, then one will be done first, then second, then somebody else will be picked up, then somebody else will be picked up. So how they are picked up is random, but at least it ensures that there is never a situation where 2 broadcast receivers are running parallelly. So that is what is the concept, and based on this you can build some business logic if you want.